Ladies and gentlemen, rarely do I actually start a video just say, I really enjoyed reading the news today. It was like, I'd like to thank the ANC and I'd like to thank News24 and all those lovely people for making today's news day just like fun. Anyway, before we get on to the main video of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I'm his best channel on YouTube. It's got news, it's got political drama, it's got comedy. It's got comedy by the spades. And if you'd really like to support the work that I do here, coffee always helps. I'm a bit of a coffee addict. I mean, look, it's even a coffee pot right there. You're welcome to sponsor me a coffee. The link is in the description box below. So even before we start, let's start off with some really good news. Apparently, Julius, you remember that guy? Julius Malema killed the Boer. Julius Malema, yeah, that one. Anyway, he was applying to go to Britain because he was going to go to a Cambridge conference. What he was going to do in Cambridge, haven't got a clue. Anyway, apparently he went to the airport and the Brits said, yeah, we don't really want you here. Apparently he disputed it and they sent him a letter saying, we regret to inform you, you're just not welcome in England. Yeah, you're not very happy. Well, that's the first set of good news. Now let's get on to the second bit of comedy for today. So you may have seen the News24 doxed the identity of well-known Twitter expert. Yeah, Twitter expert. Twatterbus. Yep, that was his name. Twatterbus. Anyway, he goes by the handle what? And what he does is he posts things online, such as the current state of South Africa. Now, according to the news articles, he's a alleged farmer. He posts things such as farm attacks and what on his Twitter account. I'll be clear, I generally tend to avoid Twitter myself because it's degenerate. But in any case, I know some people really enjoy it. I mean, Herman used to love it. Don't know why. It's just like blackens your soul, doesn't it? But in any case, this guy likes to post his stuff on X, Twitter, and apparently it's been retweeted by Elon Musk, which makes him public enemy number one. Now, News24 decided that they were going to dox his identity on the basis that he was running an anonymous profile. And as a result of that, News24 have had quite a lot of backlash. And very unusually, News24 have produced a number of articles that I must say, every time they produce one, I grab the popcorn. It's just great. So they first doxed his identity, put quite a lot of effort into the doxing page. Then they create an article on how do we find him. I mean, let's be honest, dude. You probably bought a source somewhere and all your little jumping through hurdles to say, we found it on like what can only be described as Sherlock Holmes level of investigations. Don't believe that in the slightest. And now they've had to produce another article saying, well, why did we actually do it? And what was the reason? The problem is that a lot of the comments to these doxing of this individual have been very negative towards News24. Specifically, a Change.org petition was created to get Adrian Basson fired as, well, the chief editorial duty at News24, because people aren't happy with him. Now, very interestingly, Peter de Toit came out to defend the entire investigation and said, well, if you see this information here, which is one of the pieces of the information that they highlighted in their docs article, they said, well, you see this, there's no source for it. In fact, here you go, have a look yourself.
Waar kom die inligting vandaan? Daar's geen bron nie. Zero. Dis disinformasie.
This comedy gold is that, apparently this information was, disinformation. And I agree, disinformation. So where did this information come from? News24. That's right. News24 confirms that News24 is disinformation. Now, you see, ladies and gentlemen, this is the problem with legacy media. You see, the rest of us with a brain cell, like me, at the end of every video, I said, my opinion, you're welcome to dispute it. You tell me in the comment section below. I'm not the arbiter of truth, but you see, legacy media is like, nope, we know the truth. We're smarter than everyone else. We'll tell you what the truth is. And if you disagree with us, disinformation. Even when you quote us, it's still disinformation. And I must say, this really didn't work out the way News24 thought it was going to work out. Now, you see, the problem is when you dox somebody online purely on the basis of you deem the information that they're providing to be inaccurate and it's only a bit racist, I'm going to be honest and say, dude, have you seen Herman Shoba lately? Like, that guy's tweets are pretty spicy and full of disinformation. Why are you not doxing him on a daily basis and fact-checking him? You see, this principle can be applied to a number of individuals. So sometimes, just sometimes, I would suggest, I know you have slow news days, but you might just want to keep that to yourself and find some other news. Do a news article about a kitty stuck up a tree. But seriously, some news, just leave it alone, guys. Just leave it alone. It's not worth it. In other news, former Chief Justice Zondo has come out and basically said that he finds the government to be rather unusual because he says that the government keeps taking credit for things that the judiciary does. He says, let's use the example of former President Jacob Zuma. He says it was the judiciary that wanted to lock him up, and it was the judiciary that said that his release was unlawful. And then the government, the executive to be specific, went out of its way to, undermine the work of the judiciary and then claim that all the work that they had undermined was their work.
But I think I deserve to mention the judiciary, because it is the judiciary that issued the Nkandla judgment that, in the view of many, turned the tide. It is the judiciary that sent out a very good message that whether you are president or a former president, if you have done wrong, we will send you to jail. It is the judiciary that made sure that when some irregularities were done to release a former president from prison, it is the judiciary which declared that that release was unlawful. But it was the executive which wanted us to believe that coincidentally, when he came back, there was this plan that certain prisoners should be released, and he just fitted into that plan. Some of us did not believe that. With those words, Advocate Muchibi, I thank you very much for having invited me. I hope that your conference will continue to look at ways in which our fight against corruption in all our countries will be more effective as we move forward. Thank you.
Sounds about right. I mean, if you've dealt with the ANC, you know how they work. Everything that's bad that happens is your fault. Everything that's good that happens, even when they didn't do it, is, well, their fault. Yeah, it's great. It's like having a wife. That's a government. Just my opinion. Shoot me in the comment section. Now, you see, why this is really interesting is that we are reminded that actually it was the executive, specifically the executive led underneath the then dominant ANC. Remember, they had a majority that did let Jacob Zuma go. But you see, the very person that did that, Cyril Ramaphosa, is now being criticized by Jacob Zuma, who frequently says that the ANC is just, dead. He says it's not. He used to think it was just a limping along party, but he doesn't think that anymore. In fact, what he actually says now is it's just a dead party. It's full of like the DA and President Cyril Ramaphosa, who in his words is a crook. I think that's ironic, Jacob. Come on, man. Pot calling the kettle? No, we're not allowed to say it. Be racist. So why exactly is Jacob Zuma making these digs at the ANC? And actually, the suggestion being made is because he wants to do a deal with Paul Mashatile in order to get him to boot out everybody else, and then Paul sides with the MK party. But you see, if Paul did this, he'd be the world's largest moron. Because when it comes through to personalities, let's be honest, Jacob Zuma outshines Mr. Paul Mashatile any day of the week. Paul doesn't have a very strong constituency of his own because nobody knows who he is. He's a bit of a no-name brand when it comes through to the ANC hierarchy. So any form of coalition that he would do with Zuma would mean, well, he'd be the deputy, Zuma would be the president. Even though the ANC have more of the votes than the MK party does. That's just personalities, and that's just logical. Going then on to the news of today, and I gotta say, I'm loving this. I'm just loving it. So the news actually relates to the court case around, well, the Employment Equity Amendment Act. Now, the Employment Equity Amendment Act is currently in the Gauteng High Court and is currently being disputed by, well, the DA, who says that the act is, and I quote, racist. In any case, the mythical argument of the Indian that has to be relocated in order to get a job because of the employment statistics was raised as, well, one of the arguments against the act. I don't know why an Indian, maybe because they have less numbers. And the ANC, in predictable fashion, said, well, you see, you're wrong, because an Indian, technically underneath the act, is defined as black. So they wouldn't be impacted by this at all. And so if that mythical Indian, if they're not impacted, your argument is moot. Your case must get struck out. And I got to say, this is stupid people's logic. To make the logic even more dumbass, their next argument was the act itself is not unconstitutional because, you see, according to them, affirmative action is actually embedded in the Constitution. It's required in the Constitution. And so all they are doing is fulfilling their constitutional requirements. Their next argument is that the act itself met all the constitutional requirements in order to be a constitutional act. Even though many of the guidance notes prior to signing it said this was not a constitutional act and it needed to go back for redrafting. But that's a conversation for a different day. In fact, we've seen something very similar in relation to the NHI Act. Get the advice, ignore it, then say, well, what advice? Seems the ANC's way. But you see, why it becomes then even more interesting is they said, the problem isn't us. They said, we will do the whole sectoral targets based on our engagements with employers. Except the current sectoral targets had zero input from employers. And you just published that and told everybody else to shut up and get on with it. It's almost like you're talking out your, that end. In any case, the next argument made was the act itself is not unconstitutional. It's actually the ways that the employers embed it. You see, if an employer embeds it in an unconstitutional way, then it's not our fault. It's the employer. I mean, we haven't actually told the employer how to embed it. We've just told them if they don't hit this target, they could be fined 10% of their turnover. But the rest of it's their problem. Sounds like a win-win for the ANC. And that may be why employers are saying, this is just complete wash rubbish. Because it is. Now, these arguments, I must admit, just left me dumbfounded. Because they're stupid. Now, not to be outdone in the stupid department, IOL then released an article that basically says that Helen Zille claims investors told her that government policies, including the Employment Equity Act, were driving away investors from the economy. Dude, they didn't just tell this to Helen. They've told it to pretty much everybody with 2 ears. They've told it to the Free Market Foundation, they've told it to the IRR, they've told it to the DA, they've told it to the Freedom Front Plus, they've told it to the ANC, they've told it to the PA, they freaking told it to Bloomberg. Every single person on the planet repeats the same thing, especially if they come from a foreign investor. There's been numerous individuals that have left South Africa, such as Shell, highlighting BE, to suggest that it's just like Helen made this up in his head. It's just the heart of like stupidness. But I guess IOL, which is ANC owned, I don't know, allegedly, who knows? In any case, that newspaper just generally tends to really like to peddle all of the little misconceptions that the ANC wants the general public to have. And yes, I'm sure it suits the ANC at this point in time to say, there's nothing wrong here. Like, what are you on about? Of course, this is all just legit. It's just the DA that has a problem. Except it's not. Now, you see, the reason that they're doing this and why it even becomes more interesting is apparently, according to the ANC, this does not discriminate. It's just a way of like improving the equity of the country and bringing in the previously disadvantaged individuals. It doesn't disadvantage anybody. But the question is, if your employer, who you don't control, you just work there, let's say, for example, they have 100% white people, as an example. Okay, you might say, well, they shouldn't have that. Yeah, no, that definitely shouldn't happen. You should be more representative and you should be more whatever. the act comes in, how are they going to do it? Well, you're going to fire people. And that person, having got fired for no other reason than their skin color in order to meet a quota, would mean that they were discriminated against by their employer because of a legal requirement imposed on them by a government. Are we following this? This is how it works. So to suggest that, well, it's not our fault, it's just the employers, it's just poppy rubbish. Come on, guys. As they say, one must try harder. But you see, also the suggestion that it's just like the DA. There's just the DA. They're the only ones that think this is impacting the economy. And yet, when we go and we read the ANC's own policy documents from 1994, they said that they want affirmative action, but they cautioned, they said, if badly managed, it would simply redistribute resentment, damage the economy, and destroy social peace. If not undertaken at all, the country will remain backward and divided at its heart. Now, isn't that lovely? Because it shows you that the ANC understood in 1994 that this could kill the economy itself and create resentment, which it has, which is why the DA is challenging it. Yes, I don't know what to tell you. These people are just retarded. But just when you thought the retardation couldn't get any worse, here's your daily reminder, ladies and gentlemen. If you voted for Action SA, you're an idiot. Because not to be outdone, Herman Shoba, the guy who said I'd never work with the ANC, who is currently working with the ANC, who also says, I'm really all for integration, social harmony, and non-racialism, is showing us that he's not. Because according to Herman in his own tweets today, he says, in relation to the race-based legislation, he says, well, tomorrow I'm going to take South Africa through over 50 racial laws passed by the apartheid government. Dude, you were literally a millionaire in apartheid. Like, let's not pretend otherwise. And it's really interesting that you, in your own manifesto for Action SA, said that you were against BE. Arbitrarily, you were just against it because you wanted there to be merit-based employment and not just transformation. You know, transformation? Yeah, that buzzword. Well, apparently, what Herman says and what Herman does is very different because we've seen that. Herman's not all there anymore. He's not the same guy. So somebody hurt him. Maybe him and John had like a one-night stand and John just never called back. I don't know, but the level of like, something is just not right. This is just not normal. In any case, Herman, my guy, let me help you here. When you say things like this, it makes it sound like transformation is revenge. It doesn't make it sound like you're doing it for a social good. It sounds like you're doing it because it's revenge. Remember what the ANC said in 94? Could lead to resentment? You're going to be resented if all you're doing is saying, well, actually, we wanted reconciliation, everybody to live in kumbaya, but actually now we want revenge. That's how resentment gets born. Come on, my guy. Like, try harder. Seriously, man. Try harder. Any case, these are all my views. What a day in politics. I must be honest. I say that I really enjoyed reading the news today. It was just so retarded. I just didn't know what way to look. Any case, until tomorrow. Bye.